Hello. Uh, Good afternoon to everyone if you are on the East Coast. Good morning if you're on the West Coast. Uh, Thanks for joining today. We are excited to talk about building career pathway programs and integrated employment and training in the virtual space. We're going to give people just a minute, maybe 90 seconds to log in. I see a lot of people have already logged in. Thanks for joining us, and we'll get started in 1 minute. Please say hello. In the chat, you can let us know where you are dialing in from. I'm seeing Vermont. I'm seeing Georgia. Oh, another one from Vermont. Excellent. Southern Indiana. Let us know where you are dialing in from. San Antonio, Illinois. Thank you. And I'm glad to see that everyone's very comfortable using the chat. I want to encourage you to please use that chat use the Q&A for any questions that you have. We want to keep this session interactive. So we welcome your questions. Please just drop those into the Q&A. Okay, let's kick things off. We are talking about digital English programs designed to empower immigrants and refugees by helping them to connect to career pathways. Next slide. I want to introduce myself. My name is Tad Walmister. I'm director of the New Americans program at Voxy. I've been with Voxy for over 1.5 years now, joined right at the beginning of 2019, but I've been working with immigrants and refugees, supporting their employment outcomes, career advancement, helping them to connect with career and educational pathways for about 13 years. And I know that this is very rewarding work that we're all doing. So thanks for contributing to those efforts and helping new Americans to empower themselves. And Katie.
Yeah, thanks, Tad. I'm Katie Nielsen. I'm Voxy's Chief Education Officer, and I've been with the company for over 9 years. And I helped build the platform and software that we use to take real-world materials and help immigrants and refugees get access to ESL materials that actually help them with their careers and jobs. So before this, I spent about 20 years on the other side of the table teaching ESL students, doing teacher training, and doing research on how to use technology for language learning. We're really excited to talk to you today about how you can take your integrated education and training programs and make them online and improve outcomes for your English as a second language learners.
And I have the first question that's a very easy one to answer, and that's will there be a copy of the presentation? And yes, the slides will be posted along with the recording on the COABE website. So thanks for passing along that question, and please keep them coming. So let's get started. English is the empowering and the main tool behind integration. It is a gating tool, whether that be a gateway to career pathways, to pursuing higher education. The stronger that someone's English language skills are, the more open they are to different opportunities for training, for career advancement within the workplace. And I'm sure that with this audience, there's no convincing needed as to how important it is to help new Americans to improve their language skills. At the same time, there is a focus on reskilling and upskilling of incumbent workers and job seekers. This is incredibly important right now because we are seeing shifts in demand within the job market. Some professions that were hiring just a few months ago may not be hiring right now because of changes in demand and how really so many industries are being impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. At the same time, there are professions like healthcare and transportation and logistics and e-commerce that are rapidly increasing. There are apprenticeship opportunities, but unless new Americans, immigrants, and refugees have the language skills they need, with likely at that low intermediate level, they're not going to be able to enter those training programs, and they're not going to be able to connect with those career pathways. So I'm sure that everyone is well aware that everything changed earlier this year in March. We had classrooms closing down. We had healthcare systems that were becoming overwhelmed. And we had industries that were furloughing and laying off workers. Unfortunately, immigrants, refugees, people of color were more affected by these job losses. And this has made the world of adult education, English language learning, career pathway programs all more important because many individuals need to reskill for some of those in-demand jobs. And we all can play an important role in helping them to connect with career pathways. So how do we do that? How do we enable English language learners with the English they need to connect with career pathways and educational opportunities? Well, they need programs that provide on-ramps to careers, bridge programs that fill skill or language gaps, pre-apprenticeship programs that can actually provide someone with some of that vocational ESL that directly aligns with the training and certification program, and then also integrated employment and training programs, which are providing language training, workforce preparation and job search support, as well as occupational and skills training, all at the same time. And so that, with that in mind, I want to start to introduce you to Voxy, if you haven't heard of Voxy already. And Voxy is here to break down those language barriers, to empower individuals to be able to achieve their goals and reach for their dreams. And I can pass it off to Katie to tell you a little bit more about Voxy. Our New Americans Initiative launched in 2019, but Voxy has been doing this work for just about 10 years.
Yes, and what we're excited to tell you today is really why our approach works so well and how it can be implemented in any different kind of workplace. First, we're going to talk a little bit about integrated employment and training and why English language instruction makes so much sense to incorporate into other career development opportunities. And first of all, it's important to understand that learning English is acquiring a skill, not studying a content area. So fundamentally, English is a tool that people use to do something else. And what makes the most sense is to teach them how to do the something else and English at the same time. And we know this makes sense from decades of research on second language learning. We know that learners need access to input or many examples of the language they will be using, whether it's videos of people doing the job tasks that they're going to be able to do, or employment training materials. They need the opportunity to produce the language they're learning themselves. They need the opportunity to interact with other people, and they need feedback on what they're doing. So integrated education and training lets us do all of these things at once. What we're doing is taking the most effective approach for adult language learners using relevant, contextualized, task-based content from the real world that maps to their real world needs and their proficiency levels. Now, the whole world has been thrust into emergency online teaching. But over the last 30 years, there's been a growing body of research on best practices for technology-mediated instruction. And what we know is that a blended approach works best. We want to use software for what technology can do best, so people can do what humans do best. We never, ever, ever want to take teachers out of the business of teaching. What we want to do is use technology to make their teaching more efficient and effective and easier for them. So we can give learners customized study plans based on their proficiency level, based on their career pathway. So teachers can do the work of giving learners feedback and helping learners navigate those materials. You always want to start with real world materials. There are buckets of textbooks full of fake English, scripted dialogues that no real person would ever have, isolated word lists of the vocabulary that follows a specific sector. We know that that actually doesn't work to teach people languages. What does work is taking the materials that language learners will need to engage with in the workplace or in the job training classroom and using those materials to teach them the language that they're learning. And that's precisely what we've done. So we have a personalization engine that starts with understanding why learners are learning English, understanding their proficiency level, understanding their interests, their career goals, their level of education. And using all of those inputs, we use technology to do what technology can do best and personalize an approach for learners. Because the right thing is different for everyone. What Tad and I are doing right now, lecturing at all of you, explaining how this works, that's the worst way to teach adults, because adults learn by doing and they pay attention to things that are interesting to them. So if we can deliver a tailored, personalized English course that's integrated with learners' career goals to them, they pay attention to it, they learn much faster, and they're able to use the content from their language course in the real world right away to improve their careers. So how do we do that? I wanted to put a slide in here to walk you through what we do because it's unique. And we have 10 patents on the content processing tool we built. So we're able to do this very quickly at scale to meet the needs of hundreds of different institutional partners. What we do is ingest content. And what that means is we take the content that English language learners need for their careers. Right now, that might be health and safety protocols in the time of COVID, or it could be employee benefit information. It could be how-to manuals for how to operate large pieces of machinery. We take that English material and we figure out the proficiency level for which it's most appropriate. So we can understand what level a language learner needs to be to understand the material. We identify all of the domain-specific keywords that are most important for understanding the relevance of that piece of content. And then we generate hundreds of personalized activities that can adapt in real time based on learner needs. So this might be easier with an example. We can go through and take, for example, a video on tips on cleaning and disinfecting workplaces to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We can take the transcript of that video and turn it into 218 different personalized activities that get delivered to learners just in time in their integrated education and training program. So what's happening here is learners are getting the English they need to do their jobs better and understand what's expected of them in the workplace, improving both their workplace outcomes, their career mobility, and their English all at the same time. We've done this already with dozens of courses and training programs. Some of them are general, English that you need for the maritime English industry, English for certified nursing assistants, English for aircraft maintenance technicians, and we've also done this for specific employers, taking health and safety manuals, taking employee benefits information, and turning those materials into language lessons for employees. And we see that it works. Learners get the English they need for their jobs and the English that they need to improve in their careers all at once, rather than pulling ESL out as a separate a separate class, integrating English language instruction with workplace training and career development solves two problems at once in an integrated way. This is just a couple of examples. We have the English that you need to work in an e-commerce warehouse. And learners learn things like describing roles and responsibilities, learning about order picking processes and ergonomics. And we have an introduction to warehouse machinery, where they learn about forklift training, operation, and certification, and they learn to prevent common forklift accidents. One problem with learners with limited English proficiency working in manufacturing contexts is that they often don't understand the health and safety instructions that are delivered to them in English. We have a way to help them understand those instructions and actually use those instructions to improve their overall English proficiency. Here is an example of how we've done this with a course for certified nursing assistants. We have a lesson on what a resting pulse rate is. This lesson comes from training materials for people who are native English speakers who are learning to become certified nursing assistants. What we've done is taken a subset of those training materials and turned them into lessons. So learners learn things like resting pulse rate and rhythm and range, not the same words you find in a one-size-fits-all intermediate ESL textbook where everyone learns the words for apple and banana and book and airplane. They get industry-specific content in context, and they can get help with definitions and translations and simplified definitions in order to understand the material, which, if you go back to my earlier slide, because learning English is a skill and adults learn by doing, helps them improve their overall English proficiency. So I'm going to turn it back over to Tad, who's going to give you a little demo of the platform.
Yeah, I'm super excited to share more, to give you a peek behind the scenes of Voxy and to see the learner experience. And we're going to take a look at some of those courses that are in high demand right now, which is so important for many of our adult learners who need to retrain for a new type of role. So that's how we're being responsive to employer demand, trying to help job seekers and learners connect with opportunities in growth sectors like allied health or like e-commerce and warehousing. So let me share my screen. I've got a couple of lessons that we can take a look at. All right, so is everyone seeing my screen? This is an actual activity. This is a Voxy lesson from the English for Certified Nursing Assistants. You'll see at the bottom of the screen, these are the words that the learners are learning about. They can actually
recording.
Hear that word. And let me make sure, Katie, can you confirm, is the sound working? Let me pause for 1 second. I just want to make sure.
Yes, the sound is working. I was muted. I couldn't find the unmute.
Just want to make sure. So each Voxy lesson is going to have 3 different activities. Different learners, based on their performance and proficiency level, may see different activities. This first one is a vocabulary activity. And these are the words that they're learning before they're being exposed to that authentic piece of content that teaches those words in context.
Communicating.
So in this activity, the learner is actually matching
communicating
the sound to the bubble that includes that word.
Condition.
They might get it wrong, but they'll have another try.
Prior. Range.
I'm just going to race through this because I want to
recording.
see how there is a second different type of activity that's engaging with these
significantly
vocabulary words.
Undertakes.
Vital signs.
I'm doing pretty well so far. So you'll see these are the vocabulary words that I'm learning in this lesson. I can listen to those words again,
Communicating.
see their definition. But let's go on to the next activity. Now there's actually a listening activity where we're going to watch a video. We're going to hear text related to this topic of vital signs.
When taking vital signs, report the following to the nurse immediately. 1. Any vital sign that changes significantly from a prior measurement. 2. Vital signs above the normal range. 3. Vital signs below the normal range.
So you'll see the learner can actually replay that. There was closed captioning showing the passage, and now they're going to answer questions based on what they just heard. So which measurement does not need to be reported to the nurse? I can get it wrong once and try again. I know that it is, if they're in the normal range, I don't need to report those.
These changes may signal an important or dangerous change in a person's condition. From a clinical healthcare perspective, taking, recording, and communicating a patient's vital signs with the healthcare team is one of the most important tasks a nursing assistant undertakes.
So that was another activity where I engaged with the same piece of content, the same vocabulary words, and now there would be a spelling activity as a third activity, helping to cement the learner with acquiring those vocabulary words, but also some of the skills and understanding the role of a certified nursing assistant. I'm going to exit this out because I want to show you a different type of activity related to the e-commerce career pathway. So you'll see there's a similar format. There are vocabulary words that the learner is learning. They can hear those vocabulary words. And in this case, they're going to listen to an audio clip. They're going to see those vocabulary
Belt
words
pick system.
in context.
Pallets.
Product.
So they're learning important vocational ESL. They're learning workforce skills as well as their English and literacy skills. So now,
In a belt pick system, pallets of product are taken from the dock and placed on a belt or in racking slots. Selectors then remove a specified amount of product, as per customer order, from the slots and place it on a conveyor belt that runs down the center of the slot aisle. Product from each aisle comes to a central area where the product is removed from the belt and placed on a pallet. After a palletized load is fully assembled, it is usually wrapped with a plastic material and loaded into a truck for delivery to the customer's facility.
and this content, you'll see it's coming directly from an OSHA website. And now there will be questions that are asked based on the passage we just heard, the passage we just read, the vocabulary words that we're learning. And as the learner is completing these activities, those words are actually going into their word bank. They're being tracked so that that learner can review the words that they're having trouble with and the words that they're doing well with. You'll see both of these examples are taking pieces of career-focused, real-world content from sources like OSHA or from a certified nursing assistant course. And the platform is making it more accessible for English language learners. Anything I missed, Katie, that you want to share about those two examples of career-aligned content in the e-commerce area or in the allied healthcare area?
No, those were great examples. I would just point out that learners have access to hundreds of thousands of activities because every single one of those pieces of content could have 218 different combinations of learning activities based on how the learner is performing in real time. We've gotten a number of questions. I've been trying to answer them as Tad has been doing the demo, and we will get back to the presentation and keep going. I will say there have been a few people asking about the needs assessment. And what we generally do is work with both the sponsoring institution to figure out what the learners need, what kind of workplace context they're in, whether they need to focus on oral English skills, listening skills, writing proficiency, whatever it is. And then we build a program around the needs of the organization, and we also do a needs assessment of every learner. So we look at learners' proficiency levels, we look at their interests, we look at their goals, and then using all of those inputs, the platform creates personalized pathways for learners to access the content that's most relevant to their careers and needs and goals. I'm going to share my screen again.
And one question I'll just answer before we go any further is Voxy mobile friendly? Because we have learners that can only access it on a smartphone and don't have a computer and tablet. And that's a great segue into kind of giving a summary of Voxy. So I want to talk about the accessibility. Voxy is accessible on smartphone devices. So there is an iPhone and Android app. It's also optimized for use on tablets and on any web-enabled computer or laptop. And actually, learners can start a lesson on their phone and finish it on the computer. All of that is going to be tracked within the platform. So accessibility is definitely something that's top of mind for Voxy. And learners can even download lessons onto their phone and then use those when they don't necessarily have Wi-Fi access. As a summary, we use all real-world content. Ooh, let's go back for 1 second. So whether that's coming from an OSHA website or an industry-specific journal, employer training materials, news articles, learners are going to find content that's engaging to them, that's interesting to them. And the vast majority of content is sector specific, whether that is, in the hospitality and tourism area, manufacturing, certified nursing assistants. There are dozens of different career-aligned courses. And each of those, the experience is going to be personalized to the learner's proficiency level, native language, their performance, and their interests and goals. And in terms of thinking about implementing Voxy, we provide configuration, training, onboarding support, and ongoing support and professional development to help your teachers and programs adapt to blended models and virtual models. And all of this usage and engagement is tracked in the Voxy Command Center, so that you can track time on task for reporting proxy hours. You'll understand which of your learners are engaged and who needs a nudge. It's a flexible reporting tool, so you'll be able to build those reports that will show you what courses and activities your learners are completing, what is their performance, and on a regular basis, typically every 90 days, the Voxy Proficiency Assessment is going to measure those skill gains.
So how do we know it works? Well, one of the ways we know is because we measure outcomes. So we pay attention to how much time learners spend in the platform, their mastery of the language they're learning in the specific sector focus that they're on. We measure their overall proficiency improvement. We collect data from all relevant stakeholders, from learners, from their supervisors, from their administrators, from their teachers. And we collect evidence of real world success, because fundamentally people they're learning English because they want to do something else. So we want to measure how well they can do the something else. The Voxy Proficiency Assessment, Tad mentioned, it's a proprietary tool that we built and have continuously validated and improved over the past 7 years that measures learners' proficiency, and we can map it to other scales, including the national reporting system. So learners can see what their best plus score might be or their CASA score might be based on their Voxy proficiency assessment score. Tad, I'll let you talk about this particular case study.
Sure. So this is an example of Voxy being used in a workplace ESL program, which I think is a really exciting use case for different adult education and community colleges who want to work directly with employers in their community and incumbent workers. And why this is so relevant is we're talking about learners who had pretty low proficiency levels in general, working in an upstate New York factory. Many of these learners were refugees. And within just a few months of using Voxy in the workplace and on their phones as they were at home, we saw learners making proficiency gains, and we've seen multiple individuals who actually got career advancement opportunities. Because, in a manufacturing environment, being able to understand and complete a training related to forklift operation or other machinery is actually a career advancement opportunity. So we saw some of these workers getting raises, getting career advancement opportunities, and most importantly, we saw managers and representatives from HR reporting that they were seeing more engaged employees who were bringing a new sense of pride to their work, helping other learners. So it really was both from an evaluation standpoint, but also from a qualitative standpoint. We saw a lot of success, career advancement, and improved engagement. And improved engagement is going to result in improved retention.
Exactly. And there were been several questions about proficiency level. This was an example of learners who were at different starting proficiencies, all in the same cohort. This is a platform that can help solve the problem of learners at mixed levels in a single group. And many of the learners had low levels of literacy in their native language, which was mostly Burmese. So it's a good demonstration of the platform's ability to work with learners who are very, very limited English proficiency with limited literacy skills. Here's another example of a really successful program where we're working, and we still are working, with the residence facilities staff at a large university. So these residential facilities workers had access to an on-campus ESL program, and it wasn't working for them. They weren't able to attend the classes. They couldn't fit it into their schedules. So the university contracted with us to offer them our platform. And what we saw were significant proficiency gains in only a few months. From October to January, we're reporting here, learners who improved their proficiency level or improved within their starting proficiency level. And what's striking is the amount of time learners spent on task. You can see that on average, learners were spending 4 hours a month, 6 hours a month. It went down a bit in the third month just because it was during the holidays with lots of vacation time to 4 hours a month, but it went back up again. I think average on that site is over 5.5 hours per month that learners are spending using a platform on their mobile phones during their workday, and also reporting significant increase in their proficiency level, significant increase in their ability to communicate with their supervisors and their peers. And the university itself has increased and expanded that program to make it available not just to the residential facilities workers, but to everyone across the campus community.
So a couple of questions that I've seen that might make sense to pause for is trying to help understand what the role of teachers can be, and also how the content can be leveraged to start a new IET career pathway program. And so to answer one of those questions, courses like our Introduction to English for Certified Nursing Assistants and our English for Certified Nursing Assistants can be leveraged with a group of students to provide them with the ability to improve their English level, to improve their vocational English related to that role so that they'll be able to succeed in an online certification program for a certified nursing assistant. It can be used as either an on-ramp into that program or as a supplemental resource for English language learners. And then thinking about the role of what teachers can do, because this is a tool that can empower teachers. We do have a resource, the Voxy Teacher Playbook, which gives teachers ideas for how they can use Voxy lessons in their classrooms.
We also can offer completely personalized professional development to your teachers, helping them understand how to use the platform to take your current program and create a blended or fully distanced program, or simply use it to expand the reach that you currently have. So as I said in the beginning, our goal is never to replace teachers. What we want to do is help teachers be more effective. Using the insights in the Voxy Command Center, teachers can see when learners have been engaged, what their scores are on assessments, when they're using the platform, where they're struggling, and use that information to create more valuable in-person teaching experiences. And learners can use the platform to get customized practice with the content that's most interesting to them and relevant to them. Teachers can use the platform to see what learners have been doing to design in-person, whether they're virtual in-person like this webinar, or hopefully one day sometime in the future, some face-to-face in-person lessons around the content and experiences that learners are having. So it's a fully integrated approach that can be used in existing programs to give learners access to the content that makes the most sense for their career training objectives.
Something to also share, and this relates to this library example. So teachers can track which courses students have started and which of those courses they've completed. And we actually see that as being really important, encouraging your learners to complete one or more of the Voxy courses, which will be a series of, sometimes hundreds of lessons that going together will really support that learner in accessing the language of that content area. Additionally, the Voxy platform is the only self-paced platform that also allows teachers through our teacher platform to be able to schedule live synchronous classes that their students can access from within the platform so that they can have both an asynchronous and a synchronous learning experience. And within this class, which was a low intermediate level WIOA funded ESOL class, there were learners some who had very limited formal education and some who had advanced degrees. And so the content, while they were all at the low intermediate level, they had very different interests and goals and reasons for learning English.
Yes.
And then this is another great example at the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians. They had learners who, and this was within the context of a digital literacy plus career exploration course, trying to help people to get up to that low intermediate and intermediate level of language proficiency. They were looking to build more flexibility into the program so that learners could use their phones to study. This was back when they were able to have classroom and lab hours as well, but they wanted to add more flexibility for their learners so that they could access different career pathways, because some of these learners might have been interested in hospitality careers, others in food and beverage, and others in allied health. Within a class, each learner can find content that aligns with their career pathway goals.
So as we mentioned, and Tad, I think we have questions in the chat and in the Q&A section. You can maybe take a quick look at them while I'm talking about our WIOA alignment. We have courses that are aligned to WEO with standards so we can integrate into existing workforce programs. We have lots of awards and validations. We recently received Digital Promises certification for being a research-backed education technology product that we're very proud of. We have empirical research by American Institutes for Research showing our effectiveness, but as you saw from the case studies, what speaks more even than those third-party validations are the success that we bring to our individual clients and partners, helping get learners in workforce development programs and incumbent employees the English they need to do their jobs better and improve their own economic outcomes. So, Tad, do you want to?
There are a couple questions I see that are easy to answer. So there was a comment about, I believe that related to the Certified Nursing Assistant course, what level that is appropriate for. And I believe that that introductory course was designed for high beginner learners, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yes, high beginner, low intermediate, it starts. There's a prerequisite course for learners who are high beginner to low intermediate, and then there's a companion course. So learners who are enrolled in a certified nursing assistant program, but who have maybe an intermediate level of English, can have the support they need to help them with the course material as they're going along. So they can be co-enrolled in both.
And related to the CNA course, which is a popular course, those two courses are very popular for use within integrated employment and training programs. So the course materials come from the Ready CNA certification, which is recognized across 49 out of 50 states. So the learners still need to take a recognized certification program, but this, because the content is taken directly from a course that is approved across states, it provides the vocational ESL that relates directly to that individual's ability to complete the course, the exam, and the clinicals.
There have been a number of questions in here about proficiency level, and it's important to point out that Tad was showing content at an intermediate or high intermediate level. The program and the courses are appropriate for learners starting at every proficiency level, and we're very happy to follow up directly with organizations that have specific content needs or have questions about the leveling of the content. It's also worth pointing out that our approach, and the approach that's backed by decades of research, is that learners should be working with real world content. And what that means is they sometimes won't know every single word in every single lesson at the beginning. The goal is to give them many, many examples of the target language in an authentic context, and they will learn language both implicitly and explicitly. So people sometimes think that you need to start with the most basic vocabulary, and learners need to know every single word in every single lesson. And what we found and what we've shown with this platform and with dozens of other platforms and empirical studies is that learners can work with content that is perhaps slightly more advanced in their own proficiency level, as long as they have the appropriate scaffolding, as long as they can see lists of keywords and get glosses for those keywords and get translations for them, and see multiple examples of similar content that's slightly different, to give them an immersive experience with the real world language to prepare them to use it out in the world.
And remember that all of those vocabulary words that the learners are learning are being tracked in their word bank so that they can go and review those essentially with virtual flashcards that actually show the context where they saw that word, show the image. A couple of quick questions to answer. So the platform does track time on task, regardless of whether they're using it on their phone, on a tablet, on the computer. All of that is tracked in the command center for reporting purposes.
Yes, and there are a number of questions. One of them is about 90 days for the proficiency assessment. That's flexible. So if your program needs a proficiency assessment more frequently, then we can change that. That's just what we use, because generally speaking, unless learners are in a super intensive program, to see proficiency improvement takes about 3 months.
And also, as a teacher, if you have a student who's exiting the program early, or who you think should be assessed earlier, you can always make the Voxy proficiency assessment available to them before it's automatically triggered.
Yeah, there are a bunch of questions too about learner production. There is a pronunciation practice feature in the platform. Learners are able to practice pronouncing words in English and getting feedback on their comprehensibility. And then we have live instruction. There have been a bunch of questions about the role of the teacher and live instruction in the platform. We have teachers who teach classes 24/7 to small groups at specific proficiency levels on specific topics. Those are speaking classes and writing classes. But we also have the ability to let an organization's own teachers use the platform to teach live virtual classes as well. And those are where learners get the most practice with speaking and writing skills. Can we assign specific courses for students to complete? Yes, learners can be enrolled in specific courses. There was a question about creating courses specific to program needs. We do both. So we can work with an organization to create a course specifically for your program needs. We can also work with some existing content and some tailored content. We would do some discovery to figure out what made the most sense for each organization.
Regarding the speed of someone's talking, their speech, learners do have the ability to replay that content, to listen to it more than once, and the closed captioning.
And they can stop it as well. So learners can pause the speech as often as they need.
I see, yeah, you already answered the question about assigning specific courses. You can assign up to 3 courses for each learner who is in a class. Learners, you could also assign 2 courses and let the needs analysis or the learner choose a course that aligns with their interests. I do see some questions about pricing. So Voxy has a number of different products. Our digital self-study product that includes all of the content. We also have digital self-study plus including live classes with our teachers, or the digital self-study plus allowing your teachers to teach live classes that leverage the Voxy lesson and that they manage their own schedule within the platform. There are different price points for each product. Also, we offer discounts to nonprofit and educational institutions, and the price is based on volume. So depending on whether you have 15 active learners at a given time versus if you have 500 active learners. We sell transferable seats. So those can be reassigned if you have a learner who drops out at any given time, or if you want to have a cohort in the fall and a cohort in the winter. And the prices range approximately for nonprofit organizations. At the highest price point, we're talking about $300 per seat. That's an annual seat, and that does include the live instruction. And then for high volume programs, we're more in that $100 to $120 per seat range. And that includes all of the content, all of the configuration and professional development training, the reporting tools. So there's no additional fees. It's just how many active seats you need. And those seats are at any given time tied to an email address. If anyone on the call wants to discuss a specific program, they can always reach out to me and I'll provide a quote related to different options for that program. The pricing is not based on how many different courses you're accessing, because you have access to the full Voxy library.
There's a question here about downloading material. So the platform itself is based in the cloud. Learners can use it on through web browsers. They can use it through mobile web browsers. There are native applications for iOS and Android. But learners can also download lessons on both mobile platforms to do offline. So if you have learners who only have access to Wi-Fi in the workplace or in the library or at a school, they can go use Wi-Fi, download lessons, and then while they're offline, complete them, and then come back and everything syncs back up again. It's designed specifically for learners who live in areas of low bandwidth or who have limited access to the internet.
I see a question about pre-tests. So the Voxy proficiency assessment is included within the platform. that can serve as a pretest that can provide that learner and provide the teacher, administrator with an understanding of the student's level. You also can set the level if you use an external, a different assessment tool. And then the Voxy Proficiency Assessment has different versions, so it can be used over time to track measurable skill gains.
There are lots of questions, still a couple more questions about proficiency levels, and we are happy to do demos and talk to you about the learners in your context and what content we have or what content would make the most sense for them. Please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Tad. But we have, for the past 10 years, worked successfully with learners from nearly every native language in basically every context all over the world. For the last 20 months, we've been working in the United States. We have programs in 35 states and counting, and have shown real success with getting learners the English they need for their own economic outcomes.
And so I'm putting into the chat to all attendees just a link to the Voxy website, the New Americans page, where you can request either a product demo or specific pricing for a number of learners. That'll go right to me, so please feel free to click on that link, fill out the demo request form, and share any notes, and I'll follow up directly with you.
There's a question about the platform being used in a job site ESL class, and it's perfect for that. It can be used by any employer as a complete English language training solution that can be integrated into the employer's needs as well as meet the employee's English proficiency needs. And we're happy to talk with anyone about how to do that.
And there is a question about creating custom courses. So we do have the ability, let's say you're developing a new apprenticeship program, and this is a real world example. Someone's interested in ski lift maintenance operators. They want to create an apprenticeship for that area. If they're creating content in English, we could transform that content into language lessons that could be used as an on-ramp or as a supplemental tool while someone is completing that apprenticeship or training program.
There's a question about an agricultural focus, and we have content based on sort of real world communication and employee supervisor communication. I don't know if we have any specific English for agricultural content, but it would be great to learn more about what those English needs are to organize the content we have around that. That's one of the things that we do that nobody else can do is take our existing content library and tailor it to the needs of an organization so learners get access to the English that makes the most sense for them and for their employers.
One question that is important to answer is that Voxy is sold as a B2B model. So we work with organizations that then work with learners. So we sell transferable seats to organizations, whether they be a library, community college, adult education program, but we're not a direct-to-consumer product. So you can buy seats to Voxy either directly through us, or also ProLiteracy and New Readers Press is an authorized channel partner. So if you do have a relationship with your New Readers Press rep, please also feel free to reach out to them.
I think we've answered all the questions in the chat at this point. There were so many of them. Thank you all for your participation and for your great questions. It's always nice when these are interactive.
Katie, do you want to put up the slide that has our contact information on it?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll try to find it first.
So please, again, feel free to reach out via that link that I shared in the chat. That I'll get that notification and we'll be happy to set up a time to demo Voxy in more detail and some of the different courses and to talk about your specific needs. I know this is a year where adult educators and workforce development programs are really being put to the test. Asked to change and modify their programs from in-person to virtual and blended with sometimes no notice at all. And I want to congratulate, this is not easy work, so I want to congratulate everyone who is doing their best, adapting their programs, and trying to meet their learners' needs under very different contexts and some really challenging times. So,
and just to piggyback on what Tad said, our platform is the most configurable, integrated employment and training platform available. We can help you wherever you are in taking your program and putting it online, whether it's additional resources for an existing program, helping your teachers do virtual classes that are integrated into content, giving learners real world practice, whatever it is that you need help with, we're in a position to do that. And we welcome hearing from you about your context, because it helps us take our platform and make it even more adaptable to the needs of the populations that we're serving.
So if you're looking to build new programs for allied health career pathways, manufacturing, warehousing, hospitality, maritime English, please just reach out and we'll figure out how our content and courses can help you to build that virtual or blended program. Thanks for joining us. I could see that there were over 300 people at one point on today's webinar. So really thank you for your interest in this topic. Thank you for your questions and engagement. You really kept us on our toes with all your questions and comments. And we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon, or if you're on the West Coast, midday.